Welcome to episode 26. This is Loans and Drones, and I am sitting here with the Michael Thornton, and he's going to talk about real estate and what he does to be successful in this industry. So with that being said, let's go. Mike, how's it going?
Oh, it's going great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, let's just dive right into real estate. What got you into this crazy world that we live in?
Oh, it is a crazy world. Well, my dad has been in real estate for 50 years now. And so I would see him come home and I'd see the highs and the lows. And it was funny. He always said, if you ever get into this business, don't get too high and don't get too low. And I said, well, I'll never be in this business.
I love it.
I was like, I'll never be in this business. But I did have an interest in real estate, more so on the investing side.
Yeah.
I remember being in junior high and high school, watching all the flip my house shows when those were starting to get popular, things like that. And so I always had an interest in real estate from the standpoint of, can you add value to something? You know, how do you make it more valuable? Things like that. So I went to Michigan State, studied something completely different, came out to Chicago because I took a job with Kraft Foods.
Okay.
And I was a few years into that job and I said, you know what? That real estate thing, let me get my license. It doesn't take that long to do. And I had got my license in college with my dad just to do some stuff on the side. And I said, you know, it's only going to be 90 hours. Let me just do that on the side. I'll do some investing. And so I did that. And this is all while working at Kraft, and partnered on a flip. And I thought maybe this is something I could do on the side. Quickly realized that's not a part-time gig. You have to be there on site.
Right.
So I said, okay, well, that's not going to work. How about buying some rentals? And so I started thinking about that. And then more years passed, and I just was looking around the office at Kraft, and I said, there's not enough autonomy for me. I'm too entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
I said, what if I just went to work with buyers and sellers? I love people. I was selling at a high level at Kraft with just high-level conversations with executives, trying to work our different, I was working a sales planning job.
Yeah.
And I thought, I think I could be really good at this.
Yeah.
And of course, I thought about it for 2 years without telling my wife. And I just sprung it on her one day that I'm going to quit my job.
How'd that go?
With 4 kids.
Wow.
She's like, no. And of course, no, she was very supportive, but she's like, you need to tell me more than just I'm quitting my job.
Yeah. Well, that says you have a good wife then.
Oh my gosh. So she's like, well, tell me more. And so we started planning, and she's like, I trust you. And if this is something you feel like you want to do, but it was tough because it's like, hey, if you're successful, maybe I'm going to make 25% of what I made my first year, maybe 50%, of my old salary the second year. And hopefully by year 3 or 4 was kind of the plan. Hopefully I'm making roughly what I made when I exited Kraft by year 3 or 4. So that was the plan.
Okay.
And I had a mentor who told me, you need to save up 6 months of expenses to get started. And I wish he would have told me 9 months, because I was literally to my last penny. I was about 6 months into the process and had a fairly fast start, but I was investing in my business. So that was kind of the missing link.
Right.
Yeah, I had 6 months of expenses, but I also wanted to invest in my business to get it off the ground. And I remember sitting there, we were doing a church plant, and we were sitting there praying over the new church plant. We were on site. We were ready to open the doors. And I was like, selfishly sitting there thinking about my own situation. Like, I need something to come in. And this was January. And the next day I got 2 calls and 2 listings came out of it. And this is like month 7 in the business. And then 2 months after that, I closed 6 deals in that March of.
Wow.
So it was 6 deals all the way up to that 7th or 8th month.
Yeah.
And then it was 6 deals in March, which got me kind of back on my feet. And then I got the ball rolling from there.
And timeline, how many years ago was that? Like when
that was 2017.
Okay.
I was licensed in 13. I had worked probably 2 or 3 deals a year on the side, just with friends and family.
Yeah.
So I wasn't coming in completely green, but
sure.
My first full time, it was like June of 2017.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I had a similar story too. So like I came into the business back in 1998. So I've been here for a little bit, but it was a faith move for me too, to move from the company that I actually just got laid off because rates went from like 7.25% to 8% or 8.5%, major downsize from the company. And then I went to my brother. So we got a lot in common with the family business. Went to my brother's shop, straight commission, but he gave me 2 months of a draw. And I literally I was still green. Only 1 year in the business. And I remember sitting this is back when Monster, we were looking at Monster board for jobs and everything. So I was before I went to Promise Keepers, I sat there It was a surrender moment, literally sitting there going, I don't think this industry is for me, but if you want me to be here, I need something, because I just bought a car, just bought a condo, and I was getting maxed out on credit cards. Yeah. And so it was a faith move, went to Promise Keepers, same thing. Monday was clockwork. Monday came back, I had 2 deals on my desk for the next month to survive. Yeah. And then it went from like, that next 6 months, I made more money in the 6 months than I did at the previous company that I was at for a full year, which was entry level type of.
It's crazy
employment.
How similar those 2 stories are. Yeah, that's wild. It's definitely a leap of faith to do. I think what was encouraging, and I tell people that even today, I would rather trade the stresses of 100% commission than the stress of being in a job that I know I wasn't building anything.
Yeah,
I was sitting there like, man, I can't envision myself here 20 years from now. I'm not actually building anything. I'd rather go take a different stress,
right?
But have the opportunity to wake up each day and say, this is where I want to take it.
Yeah.
And so that was my driving force. The autonomy to build something and take it whatever direction I felt like was right was the reason why I ultimately made the switch.
Yeah, that's good. So you worked for Kraft for how long?
9 years.
9 years.
9 years.
Okay, so it was a pretty big decision to make.
Yeah.
Moving from, with W-2 position where you knew you could kind of balance things a little easier than a self-employed position. So, so the first year, I always ask this question too, because there's a lot of young agents or new agents that think, oh, I'm just going to get my real estate license. This is the easiest thing ever. How was that first year? I mean, I know you said there was like a faith move and you got some deals that came in right away, but was that first year easy for you, or was it not what you thought?
No, it was horrible. I mean, it was.
It's usually the response I get, by the way.
It's so tough getting the ball rolling, but once you do, it just gets easier and easier every year. I think I had 2 of my first 3 deals fall through.
Oh, wow.
And so that was tough. It was a duplex that we found out was in a floodplain that fell through. And then I had another one where an appraisal came in way under on a listing. That deal fell through. So the one listing came back around, but it was just demoralizing because it was like, oh, I got the ball rolling here. And then I was kind of starting to count the paycheck there, and it was like, oh, here we go, falls through. So that was demoralizing, but it's amazing how every conversation can yield something that you wouldn't even imagine. So I was showing a property in Round Lake like an hour away to a buyer who, come to find out, wasn't even qualified. I was like willing to do whatever.
Yeah.
And I was showing this buyer who wasn't even qualified this home, and the neighbor across the street was doing something in their front yard, and she's like, oh, you guys looking at that house? I said, yeah. She's like, oh, well, we're thinking about, getting on the market soon. And she was super friendly. And we exchanged numbers. I said, hey, I should pop over. I know nothing about this neighbor. Like, I know nothing. And so we set up a meeting.
It's Round Lake. It's got to be round, right?
Yeah, it's got to be, yeah. And so she was super friendly. Yeah. She actually became an agent down the road, and we still talk to this day. But she was like my first client just based off of being in a random place at a random time. She's in the front yard. I go there, I think the next day, on a pseudo listing appointment. They end up buying and selling. They become good friends.
Yeah.
And so I still talk to her to this day. And that would have never happened if I wasn't out there. It's just like you put yourself out there enough. And what I realized, you have enough conversations. Mm-hmm. And of course, I would do it a little bit differently today, but that was where I was at the time.
Yeah.
Kind of take whatever I could get.
Right.
Go as far as I needed to go.
Right.
And talk to as many people as possible. And that got me off the ground. Okay. And then, things started happening from there. And but the first year is so hard. I mean, if you can get the ball rolling, that's the hardest part. The hard part is not to sell real estate, is to convince somebody you're worth hiring and worth investing in to represent them. That's the hard part.
Right. Yeah. And with the market, there's people leaving. Like I just looked at a stat yesterday with loan officers. In 2021, there's 420,000. Now the renewal of licenses were 93,000 this year. So I'm like, okay, so now the service level is going to go up. So with that, what does it look like with Michael Thornton going into knowing that you're going to be competing with other agents? What is your kind of style? What does that look like to somebody that's out there listening right now?
Yeah, I think our style is very much that we want to be seen as consultants.
Okay.
So it's kind of piggybacks off my experience in corporate America, honestly, going in and you're sitting across the desk from somebody who may or may not have the same idea how that conversation should go. And you're trying to share a perspective and get them aligned to a perspective based on your expertise. So I'd go in there as the brand expert on whatever, and I would be trying to tell Roundy's or Jewel how we should price, how we should promote based on our expertise. And it's no different in real estate.
Right.
We go in and there's a little bit of that, hey, does this person have my best interests? You know, are they just trying to sell me on something? So to kind of get to the point where you build some rapport and build some trust. And the way to do that is just to share with them that you're a professional, that you know what you're doing, and that you have some very thoughtful tidbits on how they're going to maximize their investment. And the way we do that is we want to be seen as consultants. That's what it is. We're not here to sell anybody anything. We're here to give them the best information possible, to give them a clear mind to make a good decision for themselves.
Right.
And we always just share the pros and cons.
Right.
So I'm never going to tell somebody to do something. That's not my role. My role is to explain the macro, give them insights based on my experience, give them what the industry standard may or may not be, and then share the pros and cons of being on this end of pricing or that end of pricing or doing this or that, or, hey, this is how this conversation may go with the other side based on my experience. That's where I think they see value. And that's what we're going to lean into this year, because the business is going to flow up to the top and it's going to flow up to the professionals.
Yep. When did you see like the click of the hard year turning into, okay, now I have a little bit, the wheels are turning and I have the consistency, and you formulated this plan of, you know, your buyer representation and your sellers listing appointments and so forth?
I think it was being honest with what my people say in the business, like, what's your superpower? Basically, what are you going to focus on? What are you actually good at?
Yep.
And what I realized was, and I was getting positive feedback from clients, is I was taking the feedback very I was analyzing their feedback. So when they would say, hey, thank you for being this.
Okay.
They could say, thank you for being nice. Thank you for being a good negotiator. Thank you for being fun to work with.
Yeah.
Overwhelmingly, it was thank you for being professional. And so I was like, okay, what does that actually mean?
Yeah.
I think what it means is we had systems. We were very systematic. We told them what was going to happen, then we delivered on it, and then we'd follow. So I think people appreciated that. And so what I realized is they want a seller at least wants the most amount of money for their home with the least amount of hassle, but they also want to know what the heck you're doing behind the scenes. And so that last part is what I realized pretty early on. And so that just built a robust communication plan. We had systems and standards. And I think people responded well to that.
Yeah.
And so we leaned into that, and then we became a very high repeat and referral business. And that's where the things really started to click.
Yeah.
Is when we had people sharing about their experience.
Oh, good.
And we were getting those referrals. That's when I was like, dang, so all the outreach I'm doing is building business. And then on the side, it's kind of this, things are coming in, kind of like manna falling from heaven, where people just shared our information.
Right.
And people called us. And so we really wanted to lean into ways to get more referrals. Wow. And that's when it started to roll downhill.
Yeah, that's great. So you started with just you, right? So your dad was in the industry, and so you came from good stock, and then it was just you for 2017, and then moving into 2018. When did you start to build your business? Like, as far as like the people that you started hiring on? Yeah.
It was either 2019 or 20 that a friend from church, Kyle Keck, he was working in the mortgage industry, I think post-closing, doing something, but he was kind of related to real estate. Yeah. And he reached out and said, hey, I'm interested potentially in getting my license. Okay. And I really liked him as a person. He was very trustworthy. He was fun to work, fun to be around. So I said, well, if you end up making that choice, then let's stay in touch. Mm-hmm. And he ended up joining the team. And it was a little unconventional, at least if you were at least the KW systems of administrative assistant first. Yeah. But it was also a good fit for me because my big bottleneck was being out in the evenings. We now had 4 kids. Yeah. And we were starting to get into, after school stuff. And so Kyle was a huge help because he was building his business on the side, but he was also, we kind of had an agreement where he would help me kind of service my existing clients as far as showings go. Good. And that really helped us get to the next level. And then quickly after that, we had an admin start with us to help with some of the behind the scenes stuff. Yeah. And then from there, we hired our secret weapon is Lindsay Willis, who is our marketing and client services director. Yeah. And then she also does staging, and clients absolutely love her. Oh my gosh. And so she's part-time. So she's 20 to 25 hours a week. She does a lot of social media stuff. Yep. But that's kind of how it built. It was Kyle to an admin to kind of marketing and staging. Wow. There's a lot of different opinions in how to build, whether you put the transaction coordinator in front or you bring a producer. Sounds like you brought somebody that could help with the production piece because that freed you up with regards to family. Yep. And question, your wife doesn't work obviously, but she's worth way more, because my wife doesn't work either. Mm-hmm.
And that's a heavy weight for us to kind of carry a lot of times. What does that make you feel like when you wake up in the morning? Your why is your family? Is that what you would say?
Yeah, of course. And she was working all the way up to like 3 years ago, and she was working nights as a
Oh my
nurse.
gosh, really?
And so that
Okay.
was really difficult just
Yeah.
from trying to figure out who's going to be where when.
Yeah.
So it was actually a huge load off for her to stay home
Okay.
because it was so much mental energy to try to figure out who's going to be where when
Yeah.
and to line up childcare and things like that. So I don't think I felt a severe burden when she stopped working. I kind of felt like that was a little bit more of the life that we kind of had in mind, where
Got it.
it was
Okay.
just a little bit less logistics and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, the last few years we've been lucky where I don't feel that stress every single morning of I need to pay the bills necessarily.
Yeah.
But I think it's about how do I set up and build a legacy
Yeah.
and trying to make the most of what we have. Because I understand it could change at any moment.
Right.
There's
Right.
some, like 2023 in particular was a really tough year. We ended up having our best year ever last year, 2024, which
Okay.
was awesome because
Yeah.
that was also a tough environment.
That was a very tough
But
environment.
you feel
yeah.
like 2023 where you have some months where you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And you do feel the stress and you don't know
Yeah.
what's going to happen.
Right.
And so you kind of plan accordingly and try to figure out how do you weather the storm. I'm way more optimistic today than I was a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
I think we have some good days ahead of us.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
So, but yeah, the family's the big why, and I don't sacrifice. So I have a bookend of how much I can work in a given week, and I really don't go outside of that. I drop my oldest off at middle school at 7:40, so I start after that, and then I'm home maybe one late night a week, depending. We have a showing coverage calendar.
Yeah.
But I try to be at all the kids' stuff. I'm not really willing to sacrifice that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Wow. See, that's the biggest struggle in our world is work-life balance. And so it sounds like you got it down to a science.
It's still a struggle. I think the one good advice that I had received, the biggest issue was receiving calls and texts late at night.
Okay.
And
I need to listen to this.
and somebody had mentioned, I forget where it was at. They're like, hey, do your clients expect to get a hold of the attorney at 7:30 at night? And
Yeah.
we're like, no. Like, why is that? Well, it's because they've kind of set the expectation. Like,
Yep.
this is when you can reach us. And so they say, if you set the expectation ahead of time, it'll elevate you as a professional. And they also won't feel deserted because you've told them that, hey, unless we're negotiating a deal, I'd shut my phone off at 7 or whatever it is.
Yeah. Right.
And I need to get better at like doing that like 100% of the time. But I was for a while, like really being firm with that and just saying, hey, just so you know, and I'll be, available. But once we get to this time, I sit down with my family and I shut the phone off unless we're negotiating a deal.
that's the biggest struggle. Like that phone, that phone is the biggest struggle of everybody right now. Right. So like, especially when you're straight commissioner or you own your business, it's like, I cannot not look at the phone. If somebody calls me, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just need to flat out turn it off.
Yeah.
Or something just to break the pattern of wanting to go back to the phone. So
It's a tough balance of at night. It's easy for me because I'm like, look, I don't, unless this is not going to be important anyway.
Right,
Let's be honest.
right.
But during the day, it's tough. I think during the day, it's really tough because it's a balance of you need to answer the phone when somebody calls. It could be an opportunity.
Right.
But then also, when do you have opportunity to get into, deep work, as Cal Newport would say, which if you haven't read any of his stuff, it's fantastic.
Okay.
He wrote Deep Work, Digital Minimalism. It's basically how to use technology to your advantage without completely hijacking, the ability for you to create quality work because you're constantly doing this back and forth because your brain doesn't actually do that well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so how do you get into these periods where you're not distracted? You can get into deep work. You can actually work on a project that's worthwhile, that takes some energy because you're being very thoughtful, but also answer the phone. So it's tough. And I try to time block, or I actually try to have days set up to be a little bit more available versus not. So like Mondays, there's so many things to clean up. It's very transactional. It's knock a million things off the to-do list. It's a million phone calls, checkups with the team. But as I get deeper into the week, it gets more so into the ability to get into deep work. So on Wednesday, I might be creating content, and so my phone might be off for a couple hours in the morning. And then on Friday afternoon, and it rarely works, but I try to have what's called a white space where I can just work on something new, be in a space where I'm maybe not at my desk, maybe somewhere else where I can like create and think about new ideas.
Yeah.
And that's really tough to have your phone next to you when you do that.
Yeah.
So it's trying to come up with these little pockets.
That's good.
Understanding I'm still a sales professional and need to answer my phone, but
Right.
also have opportunities to create stuff that's big idea stuff that you wouldn't be able to do if you're constantly checking your phone.
Yeah, I was gonna say you're one of the best out there with consistently putting your message out there on social media. So you're saying that you have a content day that you use that for, and then you give it to Is it Lindsay?
Lindsay, yep.
And she does all the back end
Yeah,
support for
so
that.
when we're firing on all cylinders, I will actually, tape something on that Wednesday. So I'll create the script, tape, and it's usually at least one YouTube video and then 3 or 4 talking head videos, something like that.
Yeah.
And then we'll send them off to the VA for editing, and then Lindsay kind of will, quality control that, say, oh, we need to do this differently, and then she'll post and do the description and all that kind of stuff. And then she's also, which honestly have been probably our best performing post, is just her out and about capturing, restaurants or things like that, where I'm not even involved, where she does an awesome job, and that's like the ultimate leverage because people have loved those posts.
Yeah.
And those are the ones that have been shareable.
Yeah.
And she just puts that together without me.
Right. Wow. So like that's the other thing too, is the constant evolving space of social media. So you're saying that you've seen recently that it doesn't even need to be you in front of the camera. It's the camera itself with a voiceover.
Yeah, it's a voiceover, or it could just be trending audio with something in the description.
Okay.
But we're trying to work on something that's using social media a little bit more of a wider funnel, where we were a very narrow funnel for a while, where it was just me doing talking head.
Yeah.
And it was about real estate.
Mm-hmm.
And we, you realize over time, there's very few people that are in the market at one given time that would interact with that. And you still need to sprinkle it in to show people that you're still in the business and that you know what you're talking about. But we're trying to do a lot more wider funnel. And for us, the wider funnel is new restaurants, new developments, or maybe me doing a green screen of this is coming soon.
Oh yeah,
or
those are good. I like
so
those,
that kind of stuff where you could just be somebody that's living there and be interested in it.
Yeah.
Ken Pozak, who's a huge agent in Orlando with KW, he said like his mission, his funnel is everything that's if you're interested in moving to or you're living in Orlando. That's his. If it doesn't meet that, then it doesn't get posted. So he's not going to do a lot about this is a strategy for multiple offers because it's not necessary. Maybe it fits into moving to Orlando.
Yeah.
But it's more about like the area. And he's built this crazy great funnel using that methodology.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to put more timeless pieces out there too. I want to do a little bit more product stuff that you can get out there and just go, hey, this is what we're using for video, like these microphones, or like, what kind of camera are you using? And that stuff can draw people into the media piece, but does it draw people into the mortgage piece? It's kind of a weird kind of brand, but what you're doing is you're taking something that somebody 10 years down the road, unless the restaurant goes out of business for some odd reason, but you're taking the community and you're showcasing this because you're the master of that community as far as knowing exactly what's going in and what's happening with the community. So that's huge.
Yeah, people love that. Like the best 5 this, the top 3 this. We did some golf course posts.
Yeah.
And top 5 private golf courses, and people love that kind of stuff.
Cool.
And that, to your point, that's a little bit more evergreen, where you could pull that up a year from now and probably still be relevant.
Right. We're at the point of our little episode right now that is 3 random questions, kind of throwing it from left field to see what Mike Thornton's going to say about this, okay? So the first question is, if you could be anywhere today, where would it be? Besides, obviously, a cool podcast.
Scotland, probably playing golf.
Really?
I'm the least well-traveled person you probably met with here. So my wife and I both agree that Scotland, Ireland would be amazing. She wants to look at the view of the castles. Yeah. She loves the show Outlander. I kind of do too. Yeah. And so she loves the idea of going there, and I'm a huge golf fan. So going there and playing like St. Andrews or some of those golf courses.
Oh, that would be sweet.
So that's my trip.
Speaking of local community, what's your favorite golf course in this area?
I'm not a member, but I have a couple friends that are at Black Sheep in Sugar Grove, and that's fantastic. You're in the middle of nowhere, 27 holes. It's all about the golf. There's no frills. That course is amazing. And then Outreach Community Ministries does a golf outing at Butterfield Country Club, and that course is amazing. Cool. That course is me. So I can play neither one very often, but those are my 2 favorite.
I love it.
As far as what you can play, though, Oak Meadows in Addison is fantastic.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
They did a renovation, and they redesigned the course to handle water better, and it's awesome.
Cool. Well, we'll have to have you out. We just came on to Royal Fox.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we just
never been.
Just for the kids, really. They have a swimming team, so that's what drew us in there, and then they have a really good community there. But it's a smaller kind of country club in St. Charles. So we'll have to have you out and do some golf.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So what's one piece of advice that somebody has given you that you'll never forget?
Ooh. I think recently I've been thinking more about what do they say? Comparison is a thief of joy or something like that. I think that's relevant. I think when I think about when I get lost, it's because I'm looking at what other people are doing and saying I should do that too. And a little bit of the shiny object, we were talking off camera about the shiny object syndrome. So I think not comparing myself to other people and trying to like constantly be chasing the new thing. I think just having focus on what I know works and just doing those at a higher level, I think is good advice, and just not getting involved with the comparing or trying to say I should be this or that.
I have that problem all the time. So especially with like social media, you're always going, oh man, that guy's like, he's crushing it. Why can't I do that?
Exactly.
You know?
And it doesn't help. It doesn't help you.
No.
You get paralyzed. Yeah. So it doesn't help you do more or do better or higher quality. It just gets you down. So I'd say just kind of staying focused and then kind of understanding what's most important and then saying no to things that compromise what's most important. That's tough too, because you want to say yes to everything.
100%.
But I'm
always that guy.
It's like, okay, well, here's what the things that are most important. And if that doesn't align or if that doesn't allow me time to do those other things, I have to say no. Yeah.
Yeah. That's key. I mean, and then the other thing, my wife always says that comparison is a thief of joy. Yeah. She's always kind of like that rock of, just like yours. It's just, they have such a good intuition, and you have to listen because they're your partner in life, right?
Yeah, of course.
So I'm always doing the shiny lure thing. She's always pulling me back in, trying to help me keep focused. And the biggest issue, like we talked about, was the phone issue. So I'm going to listen to you on that and try to block out that time. If you could meet anybody, whether it be future legacy, right? So like the future of Michael Thornton or the past of where you came from, what would it be?
Oh, it'd be for sure the future.
Really?
I think meeting as far like, hopefully I'm around to see my kids' kids and stuff like that. But I think like seeing where our family tree goes would be awesome.
That would be cool.
That would be cool. So I think, oh man, going back would be fun too. I feel like I would have done well back in time a little bit too when things were a little bit simpler. I think I crave the simplicity, so maybe going back in time would be better for my mental health. But it would be great to see like the legacy is important to me. I think hopefully God willing, I'm around to see it all, at least grandkids. But even beyond that would be super cool to see, what you looking and be like, hey, what can I see that kind of maybe started with us or started with our kids, and how did that all play out would be really fun. Yeah,
that's cool. And you mentioned earlier that your dad's been in the business, so there's that legacy that's passing on to you. And so if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, where can they get a hold of Mike?
I think on Instagram's the best way. So Michael Thornton 1 on Instagram is the best way. We also have, you could contact us on our website, but I think Instagram's the best way to just start a conversation.
Cool. Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure, and we're definitely going to have you on again because there's more. And I just, like, as you mentioned earlier, this year is going to be one of those pivotal years for everybody in the industry that's still here.
Yep.
And you're one of those guys that's crushing it. So I'm excited to see what Mike's doing at the end of the year. And we'll bring you back on and maybe bring a teammate or somebody that we can bounce things off of, see what their perspective is with you. So thank you so much. And with that, we'll catch you in the next episode.